And we feel we're giving you probably the best setting you can find as a partner. But this gap that typically happens where you drop your kid off at school and then you are assuming some magic will occur, it doesn't. So let's say you don't feel your child's challenged enough, or you feel they could be making more progress, or you feel there's social issues going on that are undermining your child's progress or whatever. Wow, you let the teachers know. This, we work together a lot, making sure our environment is a mirror of, our expectations for character and hard work and academic development. All the things we say in print happen with this parent-teacher relationship. So yes, it's once a year. In fact, we've even contacted about 10 families and say, do you really need to come in? They're doing it excellent. There's no reason. We meet in another setting. When I taught in public or in private schools, in another setting, that's probably the only meaning interaction you have. But one of the things we teach our teachers, and I feel, is, in a real sense, you're our clients. If you're sending your kid here, you're expecting academic progress, you're expecting character development, you're expecting some special academic experiences, everything from poetry show to the academic competitions, and to keep your child on what we call the success cycle. Are you familiar with that? I use that term a lot. They're just growing. They keep getting, there's not a lot, but we stretch them a little bit. We stretched Aaron too far yesterday. We keep stretching them, and then in that success cycle, they keep having real success, meaning they worked at something and they got it, and they worked at something and they got it, and they worked at something and they got it. And by golly, by the time a kid is in the 8th grade, they look out. They're approaching their teen years and their early adulthood like, what do I want to do? I mean, of course they're going to still be naughty and get in. An American teenager not getting in trouble doesn't exist. But the main drive in their life is they just want to keep having successes. That's been built up. So as parents, and this I honestly wish I could speak for every single parent in the school one-on-one to describe what should be going on. Now, if it's not going on, you feel free to meet with teachers as much as you need to. If you don't see your child thriving in reading and in math and in writing, let the teachers know. Sometimes it may be, it's not that interested, like boys in writing. Sometimes they withdraw from that, or there could be all kinds of things. So we may give you what we observe. But I think that's one of the really special things about Birchwood, and that's why, the maximum we would have is have 2 sections of classrooms throughout, so that it remains a partner, not merely a school. I think our objectives are very different than public and private education. We want to see these kids leave in the 8th grade like tigers concerning their life. And to have the self-confidence, I know I can do stuff when it's too hard. I know how not to quit. I know I can get through this because the teachers have made me, and my parents have made me get through stuff for quite a number of years. Boy, that puts them so far ahead of other kids. The IQ stuff, the raw intelligence they get from the family, there's not a whole lot you can do about that. That's just raw genetics. Maybe it varies by 4 points depending on the kind of intellectual environment is at home, but not much. So then the development of what we call virtue. And that's one of the topics. I could say more about that. And that's what the success cycle is all about, is cultivating. We say good character. We do so because everybody grows up having character. There's no such thing as not. Everyone has character. Whether it's good or not is another thing. Good character is the habituation of virtue. So hard work, for example, you cannot teach hard work. You can have stories about it throughout their K through 8 experience, examples of people who worked hard to get stuff done. But actually what makes it happen is you practice. So you know, I'm getting a first-hand view again through my grandkids. They don't want to do anything. Hello, what do you expect? They're going to come, let me work. There's no such thing. So, you know, you're always pushing the envelope another 2 minutes. And, come on, now we can sit there, honey. We have to be strong. We can't give up. You know, the 8th grade, we won't talk like that. But in kindergarten and 1st grade, I wish there was a way I could capture this in a time film to show a child who's been doing that since kindergarten. Just a little bit, just building up the increments. And it's all the same. We all fight against how much they want to do and how quickly they want to quit. It's always the same. Because with every virtue, there's a vice. Virtues and vice go hand in hand. So if there's a virtue of hard work, there's a vice of laziness. You know, if there's a virtue of diligence, there's a vice of, what would be the antonym to diligence? Sloppiness. You know, there's being organized to get stuff done, of course disorganized, every one of them. And both potentials are there. They're there. So it all depends on what is cultivated over time. Cultivated in meaning we teach it. We've got this I Did It campaign the 2nd quarter, and I'm thinking the 3rd quarter is going to be Can I Help? And we're flipping back and forth between your responsibility to others versus your responsibility to yourself. So all kinds of silly things. You read some of the posters in the primary wing about what they did. You know, I tied my shoe 3 days in a row. This sort of, that means something. That means something. It's a part of the success cycle. Whether it's tying shoes or memorizing your tables of 3 or, you know, succeeding in one of your upper grade textbooks. Learning to go step by step again and again and again. And how you got there. That is habituating virtue. And in habituating virtue, then eventually you'll say, that kid's a hard worker, period. That's his character now. That's not something every once in a while they do. That's what they do. Put something in their hand and they work hard at it. Yeah. So, you know, when we look at and maybe this might help, when we look at developing character, we think in terms of 4 categories of virtue. There's moral virtues. Those are the ones hanging up in the hallway. Courage, I'll give you a quick 30-second blurb on each one. Courage is knowing what you want to accomplish and what you want to do, and you are willing to whatever sacrifice or whatever compromise to yourself you're willing to undertake to get there. More time, more energy, something like that. Self-control is a beautiful one for this day and age because our kids have got so many other things that they could do with their life. And it gets worse in junior high. Everything from music and fashion and all kinds of things like that. Self-control means you don't not do those things. You can't stop children from the kinds of music they might like or the kinds of fashion they're eager for. But you can teach them how to mitigate, I am not going to compromise my goals. So I will listen to music, but how long? I will play video games, but how long? You control so that you don't compromise your goal. Wisdom, more and more the children develop that. That is kind of leading a reflective life. Thinking about where you're at and where you want to go. Well, and when your children, somebody asked the question a while ago about dealing with teenagers. I think this is the most important thing you can be with your children when they get to age 11, 12, and 13 is start to build up a good relationship talking. And helping them to think about their life. This will be a hardship on you because you spent the first 10 years telling them what to do, when to do, and how to do it. And all of a sudden their little personality starts to emerge and they start fighting back. I don't care how good your kid is, they're going to fight back. So teaching them to be wise. And wise really embeds the thought of reflection. So teach them, oh, honey, let's look at all the options. Let's talk about it. Let's do this intelligently. It's your decision. But just like you would make a decision, you'd look at all the pros and cons. you would not like it if someone told you, we are doing this, whether you like it or not. Now, ultimately, you might have to say that. I'm not a fool. Sometimes you have to do that, even with an 18-year-old, in certain circumstances. But the whole notion is one of the virtues is a reflective life to lead to wisdom. So when you do stuff, that was the right decision. How do I know? Well, I looked at these 4 options, and I looked at these 5 options, and I think this is the best decision. So that's wisdom. Justice has to do with just toward yourself and just toward others. You have to honor and respect yourself, what you can do, and then work at developing it. And that's also a process, but I like that one because it's, we're having a little conference with a girl in the upper grades who is brilliant and is taking on everything. When you get to the 6th and 7th grade at Birchwood, I've never seen a kid be able to handle everything we do. Even they have, no matter what it is, they still have to compromise, and we do that purposely. So one, you decide what you're going to take on, and you learn to bear all the problems that come with it. Pressure in the 21st century is a bad thing. In my opinion, pressure is normal life. If you're a person accomplishing things, you are going to be pressured. It just becomes part and parcel. But dealing with it. So the talk with this little girl is, well, what do you want to do? She wants to do everything. Okay, then that's all right. Let's talk about what. So that's being just towards yourself. You got the capacity. Writing and math and reading, everything. And she's got the capacity to do everything. So that's being just towards yourself. Work at developing it. But then you've got to understand what comes with it. And that's also a part of the whole wisdom piece as well. And then there's courage, not courage, humility, gratitude, and compassion. Those are all the... Okay, that's the moral virtues. They kind of override all of them. I think I better say a little bit more. Humility is probably the most important if you grow up American. You are not the center of the world. Any environment, any situation you go to, the first thing you need to do is learn. Learn from everybody there. Have your ears open. Honor other people. And the worst thing you can do is, I know. So, sometimes it's not. That's why children will criticize. They're too young, but this is a great time to talk to the boys and say, do you think Mrs. Marino and Mr. Debelak are knuckleheads? Seriously, do you think they're knuckleheads? Because really that's what they're doing. And it's not them. All the kids are the same. Their whole world is just them. So to cultivate the humility, meaning, well, Mr. Debelak, he runs the school, he thinks about things, and he would not have asked Mrs. Marino to do it if she couldn't do it. So either they both haven't been there for a month, and let recess go to pot. Do you think they've thought about it? What is that? That's humility. We all have our gut reactions to things. And that comes out of our arrogance. That's kind of the flip side of humility. That arrogance doesn't allow you to see a bigger picture. And so that's an important part of your whole life. I mean, that's why many people have trouble with their bosses or with their, and some bosses are idiots, I know that, but sometimes they've got to make decisions that do not have your interests in view. There's bigger decisions going on, and if you don't see the big picture, you can't say, yeah, I just fit right here. They can't be considering my needs in this situation. There's a bigger story that's in place. That, I think that in our age, that takes a lifetime to learn that one. Because our culture is, well, we're free. We're free to do whatever we want, which is not actually a good definition of freedom. Gratitude, there's a fabulous book out. Maybe I'll put it in the clipboard, I can't remember it. Just on the virtue of gratitude. That people who give longitudinally have a richer, fuller, more successful life than those who take. There's the guy describes 3 kinds of people. There's the ones who take. They live to take. So whatever whatever it is, they're going to get whatever they can out of it. Then there's the tit for tat people. Well, all right, I'll do this if you do that. That's a little better than the takers. At least they're fair. But ironically, it's the giver. I will give you more than you asked for. And it seems like it's a zero-sum game at the end. Actually, longitudinally, it's those who give and go the second mile with people who end up having a richer professional life, more successful financial life, and more successful interpersonal and social life, which I think is fascinating. But there's tons of data to support that, as well as just human experience. Just learning to be grateful and to give. So that's humility, gratitude, and then compassion. It has two pieces to it. One piece is what we typically think, and that's feelings about people, empathy, sympathy. But also, what you do it with passion. Compassion is the compound Greek word, with passion. So those are the moral virtues. Then there's performance virtues, working hard, diligent, being persistent, having grit. There are civic virtues, how to collaborate, how to work together with others, how to appreciate others, how to make friends. That's a real important skill. And here's one for you, in case you ever have this question. People always ask me, how will children transition from Birchwood to a big high school? That's always a concern. And I say they're better positioned than kids who come from a large elementary school. And you say, well, why? And I just joked with the seventh graders this time. I said, I'm so glad we've got so many weird kids in the seventh grade. You know, and of course they laugh. He's the weird guy. The point is this. You know, in a big school, you're going to find your friends who are just like you. So if you like sports, you find the sports friends. You like music, you find the music friends. You like academics, it's a small group, but you'll find that. And actually, you never interact with the other groups. Here, you have no choice. And I love it. So, in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, they're fighting, they don't like each other, they got to deal, especially with girls, no offense. They're the worst. Cliquish, hurt other kids. You know, and boys are always too rough. You know, they want to hurt the girls when they play dodgeball. You know, that's, you know, I'd love to change it, but it ain't going to change. So either side, if your child's a perpetrator or your child's an offender, just say, this is life, and we'll fix it. But by the time they get in the 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade, they need to learn how to live with everybody in their classroom. The lesson came up in the 7th graders when I had them. We've got a new boy, really fine young man, brilliant. But kids are not that aware of incorporating right away. Oh, a new kid, come on. You know, the teachers do. So my seats, because of the work I was having them to do them, were in groups of 4. And there were 5 boys late. So 4 of them grabbed the seat and the other one's standing there. It's a new student. I said, oh, okay. Let's have a little talk. What do you do in that situation? Well, you realize there's 5 of us boys, one doesn't have a seat. Just the person with just a little bit of empathy would say, oh, come on, I'll get you. You sit here, I'm going to bring another table over. Can we have 5 here, Mr. D? You change everything because you're sensitive to the situation of everybody. And you take care of the feelings of everybody. Well, in another setting, you don't always have to do that. You separate, you segregate the athletes and you segregate the musicians and so on and so on. You can't do that here. And so when I told the kids we've got weird kids, that means all of them are weird to somebody else. And you have to learn how to receive people. I said, you don't have to be their best friends. You don't have to do an overnighter with them. But you always treat people with respect and with honor and with compassion. So they're a part of the whole group, so especially here. So ironically, our kids go off to high school. It's easy for them to socialize. They find the group that fits them, and the kids that don't, they know how to get along. Because that is a social skill that's going to go much farther than allowing little children to pick their cliques and stay in. That make sense? Mm-hmm. Those are civic virtues, and then the last one are intellectual virtues. That's learning how to be creative and innovative, not just with school and profession, but with your life. kind of goes hand in hand with the reflective piece. You know, people who live the richest life are always reinventing themselves. You kind of observe, you know, usually there's something in your life that's irritating. Could be a person, could be circumstance. It just keeps irritating you. Most of the time we just sort of run over the irritation. And then it flares up again, and then it goes down again, it flares up. Leading a rich, creative, and innovative life is having time to reflect. What things aren't going so well, what things are going so well, and restructuring our energies. I think something about us likes to get into a pathway. So now there's no problem. That's why we're annoyed when our kids are having a problem, because we're in the flow. It's not really a good flow, it's just flow of no problems. I don't know what it is. I think we fight for peace. But there's always, it's elusive. You never get it. There's always things popping up. But a reflective life, and I do this with the Ben Franklin, that starts at the second half of the 7th grade, is begin to think, what's not right about my life? And what's good about my life? And just, what can I do? Can I do anything? What partners can I bring on? I often will tell them in the 7th and 8th grade, you need to start talking to mom and dad in a different way. You need to find out what you need help for. Or if you need investment or whatever. But think about your life and think about the good things, think about the bad things. How can I make them better? Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
How do I make it better? Those are life skills. But at least by introducing them, you know, this is just by teaching more than anything. By introducing them, you're planting seeds. That's why I like this. You know, when we talk about the development of character, defining it with those 4 categories: the moral virtues, performance virtues, civic virtues, and intellectual virtues. And then we do this. I do the same thing with the teachers. So this coming professional day at the end of January, I'm going to be posing the same questions to them I pose to the children. Let's have a little inventory, personal inventory. List your strengths. What has gone really well this first half of the year? What are you not doing so well? You know, and I said, unless you want to show me, you don't need to, but you need to think about which kids are you not getting along with so well. Because, you know, I expect a professional, even if you don't like some child in your class, which happens, there's personality differences, then you better figure out ways, first of all, not to show your dislike, and number 2, how to convey care, concern to somebody who maybe there's a little rough in personality. And so we'll talk with the professional staff so they also are on a sort of self-reflective and improving who they are. Their life skills. We had I don't know if I mentioned to you, we had a person train our staff for 2 days this summer. He was formerly a professor at Baldwin Wallace. He's the one you may know. He started that entrepreneurial school, Peter Rea. Was there for 30 years. He got the funds to get that thing going, and he ran the school. And then Parker Hannafin grabbed him up to train. These are top executives worldwide, to train them in virtue. You know, imagine, top executive in Germany or France, they'd be taught how to have virtues, because there's so much research showing that as you work to improve the kind of person you are, getting a little bit better, always getting a little bit better, your whole performance changes, and you keep becoming more successful. It's fascinating. But he did a workshop with our teachers on these. He did it mostly on the moral virtues, but it's part of creating this culture. Is if you have people who are growing and are wrestling with things and are identifying their strengths and identifying their weaknesses, then what's the atmosphere in the classroom going to be like? The same thing. Because the person is like that, you convey that to the rest of the kids. If you get somebody who knows everything, they're the expert, they've been around for a long time. On the one hand, there will be good education. On the other hand, it doesn't create that culture of always trying to grow just a little bit. And that's sort of from Peter Ray. Just to be a little bit better than you were last week. You don't change everything, you don't address all your problems, and all of a sudden you're going to just what can I do a little bit better? Then you do a self-inventory, and he uses the phrase, play to your strengths. What virtues are you really good at? Do those more. And then the ones where you're a little bit weak, and maybe more than weak, you have vices, mitigate them. Try to find friends or situations that at least won't let them get worse. It was great, really good help, and the staff enjoyed that. Sure.
So how does the teacher convey that to the students? This teacher seems to be also on a journey of self-improvement. I guess first of all, it shows a good character as an example. Is there any way the child also gets some sense that the teacher is also growing? Or like,
probably depends on the teacher's personality.
Or maybe says to the child, the student might bring up some point and say, oh, I didn't know that, thanks for showing that to me, now I know something too, or do you know what I mean? Or something along those lines.
That's probably more related to the teacher's personality. But so some teachers will share what they're working on. I do that all the time with kids, and I know my wife does that all the time. Quite a few teachers do.
That's nice.
So they learn that way, but it also, when character and virtue creates culture, which is, you can't always define it, but you feel something. So if there's a culture of growing, and that's what I'm describing, maybe the children don't get a direct lesson on that any given day, but there's an atmosphere. A few people who've come onto the staff or added onto our teaching staff in the last 5 years, we'll, after being here a while, we'll just say how much they love the environment. And they'll also complain how hard they have to work. That's part of the culture. Everybody here just works their tail out, right, Cindy?
Yes.
Right, Mrs. Marina? That's just, Mr. Sato was helping with some of our IT stuff, with the report cards and stuff like that. And he asked for some time over the break because he wanted to say what they've been doing. And he says, I gotta admit, those people at school, man, they really work hard. I said, well, that's good. So that just carries over into the children. So some of the things, now that's, under the umbrella of performance virtues. But it holds true for the others as well. If I'm wrestling, my wife just told a story to the 8th graders, over the break. I think it was, where were we? We were with our grandkids in Baton Rouge. And my daughter's got 6 kids, 5 and under.
All girls.
All girls. You want an experience. And we stayed there. So it is from the moment they wake up to the moment they take a nap to the moment they get up again. Non-stop movement and noise. But all that we just admired my daughter and her husband, everything they do to give those kids a beautiful life. Look, if you have one kid, it's already hard, isn't it? Trying to give your kid the best, and then you got 6, and they want to give every one of them everything. So the levels of organization, and so my wife was explaining this to everybody, and then when we came back, we passed some Salvation Army buckets and things like that, and she just felt so moved how many other, that's a rare, 6 kids under 5 and under, but all the kids that come from challenged environments, and it just opens your heart. You see how someone else is struggling with problems, you have some empathy, and maybe some sympathy, and it opens your heart, and then you just want to give back. And it's supposed to be, her point was, it's supposed to be in dull. You never see anybody. It's always me, which I think is, that's a part of our culture. It's really hard to raise kids not to be that way, because that's just the way it is. And so she gave just that on her own example. I always tell the kids about my goals and how I don't make them. My weight losing goals, and my learning how to swim goals, and all that stuff. They think it's hilarious. But it's life, if we're always trying to improve, be a little bit of a better person than we were before, and we're thinking about it, where we want to invest a little more time or energy or money, then those are worthwhile to talk to the kids. I think I've mentioned this before, you know, in training your kids to be respectful to family. I've always felt, brag to them about your family members. Brag to them how hard you are. Oh, do you know how much he loves you? He didn't want to go to work today, but he knew he's got to make money so that we have everything we need. You got to cultivate that sort of appreciation for all those virtues. That's why I like them. They frame something. You know, when you're thinking about a beautiful person, with the older kids, I use that, becoming a great person. So a great person, he might be professionally successful, he might be financially successful, but for sure, there's a display of those virtues. So the simplest person on the street, in the simplest home, with the simplest profession, can be every much a great person as Washington or Lincoln, or someone who accomplished major things in their life. So, you know, going back to this is a big thing to how do we perpetuate that? And so, you know, our professional development aims at that. We redid our whole how we do character training at Birchwood. I gave you a little quick overview of the whole thing, but that document, we worked with the teachers over the summer. That's why we brought Peter Rea in. Many times, character development is given lip service. So you have posters on the wall. We do too. We have posters, and you've probably seen them. That's all a part of it. You need to be reminded. But boy, if you don't drill down, all right, how do we turn teaching into practice? Well, there's got to be teaching, variety of teaching from teachers, teaching from movies, teaching from books. Fill the environment with teaching of what is a beautiful person, what is a great person. And you got to have training. And that's, and the point about training, and this is where we have most of our challenges. Here's a child's got virtue and vice. And to make that virtue grow, two things are going to have to happen. Practice the virtue, mute the vice. And where do you get your problems from? Their little will wants to side with vice, just like we do. You want to work or have a day off? Day off. Right? Would you like it? 2 days? Would you like to work? 2 days or 2 days off? 2 days off. This is human. This is human. But fortunately, we've learned to control that. Children have to learn how to control that, and that's where all the fighting comes. Isn't that where the fighting comes at home? And I think, and plus we fight against the psychology. With us at school, we fight against the psychology. And the psychology is that children are just virtuous. They're just going to grow virtue. There's no fight. There's good. We just have to let the good come out. You know, that has been popular for about 50 to 60 years. That is so detrimental to children. Then by the time the kid is 16, the parents realize, you know, there is some bad things in my kid. It's a little late to change him. He's lazy, doesn't want to work, doesn't want to get things done, can't count on him, he's not friendly to other people, he doesn't know how to be social. Well, right? All the fights you're going through now, I don't want to say cherish them, because we cherish those fights. They're necessary. They're necessary. You're pushing, shaping, molding that will to go along with what is good. And they got to keep practicing until it becomes something they value. First round, they value the vice. They don't value the virtue. So that's where the struggle comes. It's the struggle in your home. It's the struggle at school. And somebody is, so many times, I think I've brought this up, I've talked about our homework policy, and I am not going to budge on it. I know it's painful. But if you don't practice that day after day and year after year, then they are not going to become those tigers when it comes to work. And is it painful? Yeah. Sometimes do we give too much? Yeah, just complain. We'll change it. Sometimes do we not give enough? Sometimes. So if parents understand the big picture, of what you're doing, you're wrestling with that little will that sides with vice, then you get a bigger context of how to work with your children, how to work with the teachers. This character thing I could talk about for hours. It's a missing component in our society today.
Some kids are a little bit easier than others. They're a little bit more malleable than others,
Yeah.
Some I could see it among siblings. Some have a stronger will than others.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it helps that you see the big picture at the end. And so your suggestion is till they're about 15-ish.
Have I told, even
And after
contemporary
that, they
research will
kind
tell
of
you,
back off.
80% of the child's character is shaped by the time they're 15.
And
It's
what-
not going to change.
What happens after that?
Well, you have experiences in high school, you have experiences in college, you have marital experiences with your own kid. But who you are in character is 80% formed. Give or take 5–10%, is shaped by the time you're 15. And that's not just research. Cultural history, whether you are from the East or the West, will tell you the same thing. You do all the shaping when children are small, because it is far easier to teach a child to work hard, for example, when they're 7, than if they've never done it, now they're 15. Now try. The two fellows who came to and they come every year now to do the dance residency and the theater residency, they said this is like an oasis. They love coming here. The kids listen, they follow directions. What we consider problems, chatting. They said, this is nothing. They said, I have whole batches of kids that say, we ain't doing that. We ain't doing it. This is stupid. And you're talking about 50, 80 kids at a time, all like that. How are you going to change that? That is already, first of all, what gives you the right? You're a student in a class. Where did you ever learn that you ought to have an opinion about what you're doing? Just to undo that would take so much. You say, that's the teacher. Well, I don't think they're a good teacher. Oh, you don't. In your vast experience as a child up till age 11, you've determined that's not a good, it's just terrible. That kind of judgment that a child would have. So they just think it's a luxury. It's a little oasis coming in. But imagine all the things you've got to undo. I was working on a task force at this John Marshall High School, trying to come up with a curriculum for the school after the school was built. And they were telling me they've got 40 to 50% of kids come in to 9th grade who are 1 to 2 grades below in reading, 1 to 2 grades below in mathematics. And then they try to run after school programs that the kids can't learn. They just won't work. And teachers say, what am I supposed to do? They won't do their work. So they figure out ways to give them grades and pass them on. Forget about whose fault it is. But the habits are not there. It is so hard to go back and redo them. So my point being, better you're fighting with your kids here and now. If you think that's a hard fight, imagine if you don't do it and you start working on them when they're 16. And my contention has always been so many children fall so far short of how far they can go in life. All of our kids at Birchwood are smart kids. They're still going to do okay. But will they fulfill what potential they have? That's what I'm working on. For that is character. If you don't have the kind of attitudes to get you as far as you can go, you'll still make a living. This is America. This is not some third world country where you have one chance and then it's over. There's all kinds of chances. But will you have the wherewithal to become the kind of person you could become? And maybe not. So if you want to look at a really big picture, you're doing things now that you hope will lead your children to have a more rich and satisfying life, to cultivate whatever potentials they have. So suffer and enjoy.
So when did, I understand that there's a change in education, but when did this change? As far as, what can I say? I suspect, I don't know, maybe years ago, there was not that difficult to get this feeling that you gotta do something in kids, or, maybe when you were in school, or when did this change, that is this attitude that you don't have to work, you don't have to do, why don't we? Well, was always the same. Here, what I know I'm confusing here, but coming from outside and having an education outside here, we never thought, oh, I'm not gonna do it. I don't remember my parents telling me, oh, you gotta do the homework. We just knew it has to be done, and I grew up
Everybody
with
was
that.
the same way, yeah.
And nobody had to tell me, oh, you don't have to play, or you don't have to do this. We just came from school, had to do this. You just grow up that way. It's not that much effort from parents and from that you have to work or you have to do. You just, I don't know, it's just natural, it comes natural.
Yeah.
But here it seems it's so much effort that you have to stay, you have to do. It was always the same?
No, it's really all kinds of facets that contributed to that psychology of sort of primarily a child-centered world, and so you build around what the child needs, which has tons of truth to it. One of the things that's wrong with an educational system, that it's one way serves all, is you miss a lot of kids. You miss a lot. Kids who are struggling, kids who have learning problems. And so to make adjustments for those children who just get left behind, that was one of the positive purposes of making adjustments in the curriculum. But it goes too far. So you throw out, in addressing one needs of one group of kids, then you sort of put aside the challenge and expectations for becoming a good student and then being successful. So there's lots of features, or lots of facets of why it is like it is today. That could be, I don't know if you want to know about the history of education in America, but we could talk about that. It is interesting. And America has the luxury of being a wealthy country, so you can think about things that maybe don't have real implications. I know when I lived in South Korea, that was in the 70s, your life's future was determined at the end of the 6th grade. Because the exam that you took at the end of the 6th grade put you into any number of tracks in junior high, which led to what high school you went to, which led to what college you went to. Your life, there was no second chance. In America, you can mess up elementary school, mess up middle school, mess up high school, mess up college, and then when you're 30, you wake up and say, I really ought to get a good education. You can't. You have so many chances. I wrote a paper in a peer-reviewed journal with a professor at Cleveland State just on this fact, that all the other countries, for the most part, developing countries, you don't get a second chance.
That's right, actually, I was thinking about that.
You don't get a second
We
chance.
don't
Here,
college,
you get
it's-
lots of chances.
it's one time.
Now, the fact of the matter is, really, you don't get many chances, because if you didn't get through the first time and you didn't build up the right kind of attitudes and foundation, you're not a reader. That's why our objective in the first 4 years of school at Birchwood and reading is just love to read. Love to read. Anything you love to read, you're going to do well. So, but if here you are, 30 years old, and you decide, I'm going to make something of my life, and you're not a reader. You get bored when you start reading. How are you going to go back to school? So yes, you get other chances, but I think the chances are diminished. So I'll tell you the truth. When I see these kids here, I feel, and my wife feels the same way, we're going to do whatever we can with you and with your family to give you all the characteristics. You could go as far as you want. You may not. You may have other passions, other interests over time, but at least you got the wherewithal. I had 2 great conversations in calling some alumni in the last 2 months. One of them, a former grad, who got a dual college degree at MIT and Harvard, and he's doing theoretical mathematics at Princeton. And so I asked him about, what his job is. He says, well, it's hard to get funding. He says, it's not hard to get funding if your research is a 10-year span or a 25-year span. But my research is 50 to 100 years. So that's the level of mathematics he's working on. And I felt really good about that. Because he's brilliant. He came in with 165 IQ. His mother sort of dropped him off at the door. Nobody can do anything with him. See what you can do. Came in the 2nd grade. We had a lot of fun because it really forced us to, we had to even look at another level of what to provide. But, okay, so what if they decide they want to be a skiing coach? That's up to them. But if you have that kind of drive that whatever I do, I'm going to bring it to the highest level, then you're going to have a certain level of fulfillment as a human being. So I think we're just giving them a head start in life. That's what we're doing here, giving kids a head start.